Hello and welcome to the Marketing Trail Guide podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Krushevich, founder of Marketing Trail Guide and fractional chief marketing officer for companies running on the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. In this first season, Opportunities in Crisis, I've been talking with business leaders and entrepreneurs about how to survive and thrive in times of uncertainty. This is episode 14, A Calling to Serve Others with Noel Burcellis. Now, Noel is the executive director of the Ronald McDonald House of Orange County, and they are a nonprofit that's dedicated to providing comfort, care, and support to families of seriously ill children receiving treatment in Orange County hospitals. And in our conversation, we discuss COVID-19's impact on his organization and the determined mindset needed to lead a team while navigating through difficult waters. Noel shares about his calling to serve others and how that's been key to keep him inspired every day during these uncertain times. So without further delay, here's my interview with Noel Burcellis. Well, Noel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Kevin. Glad to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Absolutely. Noel, I invited you on this podcast, which is mostly guested by for-profit leaders, but I grew and got to know you and grew my respect for you as we did a little work together last year. And as a leader facing, some really interesting times right now, I thought it would be really interesting to have you on the podcast as well. And, before my involvement in that work that we did together, I actually personally didn't know a lot about the Ronald McDonald House, and I even had some misconceptions. And so I wanted to see if we could just first start with you talking about the Ronald McDonald House of Orange County as an organization. What do you do to help your families? How do you do that? Where do you do that? And take us through the capital campaign and sort of the pre-COVID reality, and then we'll jump off from there.
Thanks. So the Ronald McDonald House, our mission is really to provide temporary housing for families that have critically ill children. That is the niche, that is the group that we serve. So families come from really near and far. And again, those that have critically ill children and have no place to stay. So for us in Orange County, it really means residents of Orange County residents from Riverside, San Bernardino, LA County, and we serve families from out of state and out of the country. And who is it that, right? So that we'll have a family from Palm Springs that comes in for treatment at CHOC for cancer treatment, and they would stay here. Their treatment requires for a week long, 5 days of chemo, radiation, a break, and then they come back a week later for 5 days. And so they would stay at the house. We have critically ill families that have to be in the hospital for months, and mom and dad want to stay close by. Those are the people that would stay at the Ronald McDonald House. And in Orange County, if your child is, near death and can pass any moment, whether you live 15 minutes away or if you live in South County, that's an eternity to be away from your child. And so those families stay at the Ronald McDonald House. And our house does ask our guests for a $10 contribution, and it's just that. There is no fee, there is no charge. No families turned away for inability to pay. And so not only do we are a 20 guest room house in the city of Orange. We're a block and a half away from CHOC. That makes about 80% of our referrals.
And CHOC is the Children's Hospital of Orange County, just for our outside of OC listeners. Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you. But we really accept referrals from any hospital in Orange County. So I mentioned CHOC, but UCI, Kaiser, Fountain Valley, Hoag, Healthbridge, really any hospital in Orange County can make referral to the house. Mm-hmm. And that's really our mission, to care for mom and dad so they can stay close to their child. We feel as we care for mom and dad, as we lift the burdens that they have, they would be in a better position to care for their child and be present for their child as they go through this, unimaginable journey.
Mm-hmm. And So back when things were normal, I remember being at a golf fundraiser, and there were different. You guys are obviously, as nonprofits do, doing fundraisers throughout the year. And one of the big things that was on the docket was the capital campaign. Tell us what that was all about. Why that was even a thing.
Yeah, for us, for the last over 6 years, we've been over 100% occupancy. And our 20 guest rooms, when we're full, we put families up at a local area hotel at our expense. And in years past, last year was over 60,000. The year before was over 70,000. The year before that was over 70,000 in net hotel costs. And even though that serves, some function, gives families a place to stay, it really doesn't capture the essence of what the house does. It's much more than just a bed and a roof over your head and a meal. What we find that's powerful for families is the ability to be there for others, right? So that I'm going through a tough journey, I'm reassured that there's 19 other families going through a tough journey, that I'm not alone, that even though your child may not have the same diagnosis as ours, we have the same anxieties and fears and worries, right? And so they find it therapeutic and helpful to kind of share that experience with other families close. And for the last, again, 6 or 7 years, we've been over occupancy, and we are just, we can't keep up with the demand. Mm-hmm. And our board shared that with the outlay of 70,000, 60,000 every year, now would be the time. Well, actually, it was 2 years ago that they shared, but let's launch a campaign and expand on the number of rooms that we have. And so we're going from 20 to 45. So we're going to more than double. Great. And in addition to just the additional rooms, we want to provide some programming that we're unable to do so now, right? And so the house, for those who've come to the Orange County house, it's real estate is tight. There's very small places for kids to play and things like that. And there's other needs that we've discovered as well, right? So mom's autism is not a primary diagnosis that they would come to the house, mm-hmm. but we're discovering the prevalence of that. And one of the moms had shared, my child can't withstand noise and too much stimulation. Mm-hmm. And there's no place in the house currently that he could be other than staying in his room. Mm-hmm. So part of the expansion, we were sensitive to that. And we heard the feedback from our families. We're including a high sensory room and a low sensory room for children on the spectrum. We're going to have a game room for the older teens. Really, there's no space now for them. Mm-hmm. Expanded children's area. We're going to have some counseling space where parents can meet one-on-one with a counselor to kind of share and help navigate their journey emotionally, as well as maybe challenges they have going through the hospital and that process. And so it really is a lot more than just more rooms, but really more programs to better meet the needs of the families that we serve is what we have in mind. It's a $12 million campaign. Mm-hmm. Glad to announce that to date, we're at $8.5 million raised. We still have, so we're 2/3 of the way. We have a third way to go. And so still have our work cut out for us, despite the crisis that we're in, right? And so you're thinking, wow, you were fundraising when the economy was good.
Yeah.
So what do you do now that we're challenged both the health of the community as well as the kind of just the economic factors that we're all facing now? So
yeah, what a different reality now than we were in 3, 4, 5 months ago, right? I mean, just 180. And so I'm hearing a couple things, and in this conversation, but also in just having worked together and spent some time with you and your team. And, one of the impressions, the overall impression that I have is that you and the team just have a heart for people. You care deeply, deeply about your work. It's personally satisfying for you, and you're just mission driven. I don't think you call yourselves a ministry, but I think that's what you are. You're ministering to people and families in need, right? You're serving them. You're there because you believe in the sacredness and the integrity of the family, and you're meeting a very specific need for families who are finding themselves in really challenging times, and now even more so, right? And I want to talk a little bit later about, as an organization, what you're doing to meet some of those challenges. But maybe before we go there, could you share with us what some of your families that are staying with you or have wanted to stay with you, what has COVID done in their life now, adding that crisis to their existing crisis?
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you, we have a girl in the house now. She's 8 years old and battling cancer. So pre-COVID, right, her immune systems are down. She's going in for chemo and she's just devastated, just racked with pain, very weak. Her numbers are really down, so very susceptible. So if you can imagine pre-COVID, a cold could have killed her, right?
Yeah.
And so uh, now you have this situation, a lot more intense.
Yeah.
And the intensity not only comes, and so for her, she gets treatment, then she comes to the house, there's a break, then she goes back in for treatment. So she's not like in the hospital this whole time and mom and dad are in the house. So for them, it's just an added layer, right? They have a heavy burden already. Your child is deathly ill, and you were already taking precautions before this. And then now you have this. And mom and dad's concern is now, heck, I got to be extra careful because I go bedside with my daughter.
Right.
My daughter comes to the Ronald McDonald house when we're in between treatments because we're not going back 2-hour drive from home just to come back 2 days later, right? Just the cost of that. And what I'm finding, so not only is that there's additional anxiety for families that are already going through a lot, what I notice and what our team's noticing, just the profound impact on the social distancing.
Yeah.
So if you go in the house now, we've closed out our common areas. There's no meals having together with families. Our living rooms, we've moved the sofas away. So when I shared before, we're much more than just a roof over your head, right? And I've said one of the critical pieces that families find helpful and therapeutic staying at a Ronald McDonald house is the journeying with others.
Right.
And now, unfortunately, they don't have that. We've tried to provide some support with the Zoom, but the reality just everyone's adjusting to the day-to-day. They don't see as many staff since we're working remotely now. They don't see other families since people have their meals inside their rooms now. Global, since we're not just in Orange County, right? We're around the world. And so global Ronald McDonald House gave a directive for all the houses around the world that it was effective March 21st, that we would suspend new families coming into the house. So as families checked out, we wouldn't be able to bring families in, and they were just trying to stem the tide of traffic.
Right.
So the experience of the families, they're still very grateful to have and be at the Ronald McDonald House, but there's added pressure of this fear, the precautions that we're taking at the house. That's an impact to them too. They can't socialize. So it's a change for all of us, and it is as much as we're trying to lighten the burden, it is profound impact on the families that we currently serve. We have a family that's it's international. So not only is this girl the youngest of 4, she's been with us for months with her and her mom, and they're away from home. They're in a new home, a new environment. She was a victim of a bombing in her country in Syria. Wow. Major burns, so extreme that her hands, not only through her skin, but her muscles were burned. And so part of the therapy is to get use of her hands again. They didn't speak English, they spoke Arabic. And now they're in this, so it's intensified. Their journey is intensified. And to your point, it's an emotionally charged environment. As intense as it is, I think that's what reminds really the staff just how much we're needed. And it's telling that we were considered, as essential staff. So we're an extension of the hospital services. They go to CHOC during the day, they come to the house at night for respite, and we just see ourselves as an extension of the CHOC Children's Hospital Orange County team.
Yeah.
We're as much as part of their treatment plan as the nurses and physicians are.
So we haven't mentioned family rooms yet, and I'm curious, Maybe you could share what they are for those that don't know, and are those still operational at this point?
Great question. Yes, so we have two family rooms, one at Chalk and one at Chalk Mission. And the idea of the family room is house amenities in a hospital setting. So in essence, in our family rooms, you'll see a kitchenette, a little business center, a living room area. Chalk at Mission literally has two sleep rooms. So steps away from your child, you'd have a place to sleep, shower, eat, right? And currently those are the only two family rooms in the state of California.
Hmm.
When COVID hit, the hospitals limited volunteers. They limited who comes into the hospital. It was only critical procedures that would come in. The family rooms we revisited that and they were repurposed. So the one at Mission, they pivoted to giving access to staff because they noticed that their break room didn't allow for social distancing. And so our family rooms were used to support frontline staff at Mission. At Chalk, our family rooms was closed down and visitations were limited to one parent. And they needed the real estate for social distancing so that even though it wasn't staffed by our volunteers, they had access to the kitchenette, to the living spaces so that when they did step away briefly from their child, they had a safe place to be and enough to keep themselves distant from other families in the hospital. So currently those two, our family rooms have been repurposed. Mm-hmm. And until further notice, until things change on ability for volunteers to come back to the hospital and the needs change, they'll remain that way. So we're happy to be able to pivot and to really support the hospital in a different way. Yeah. At Mission, our family room manager moved since her family room's closed, she's doing Meals of Love, but for the frontline staff. So she's soliciting donations, and that is to help feed the nurses and doctors and the techs that are caring for others in need.
Wow, what a comprehensive change that we've all been through, but I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but in some ways, I mean, that program has really been kind of gutted of what it was intended to do. And now you've really had to pivot. And I appreciate your attitude there, that we've been able to support them in a different way. The work that we did together, I realized how instrumental the family rooms are to your overall mission and the execution of it. Of course, we always think of Charles Antis and his experience there and how he got connected. And we had Charles on the podcast early on, and so we got to hear a little bit from him and his heart for nonprofits. But he himself was the recipient of the love and the care at the Mission Chalk family room as they were going through a crisis of their own in their own family. And now he's on the board and co-chairing your capital campaign. And it's just a beautiful story, a full circle story. My point in bringing all that up is, man, that piece of your ministry, of your organization, is so strategic and such a feeder into the broader level of engagement for your organization. So I don't know if you're thinking this, but I'll just say it like that. That's got to hurt to think about that arm of it being cut off, at least for right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Kevin, you started the podcast where you were very candid in saying, we didn't really know much about your charity until you met with us. And that's one of the challenges that we have is we have strong, brand awareness. Ronald McDonald House, it's not like Joe's house for, families in need kind of thing. Right. People would have heard it. They would have seen it. Maybe the change box at the stores. What we've struggled is brand understanding, right? What is it you do? And so there's that charge for our current staff to let as many people know what it is that we do. How do we serve the community? And, the other misconception is you're Ronald McDonald House. Don't you get a big fat check from McDonald's Corp? And we have, they are our mission partner from day one. McDonald's was one of really the three components that started the first Ronald McDonald House, and has been a partner since then. And we get tremendous support from the corp, from the franchisees, the owner operators in Orange County, tremendous support. But really, 75% of our operating funds comes from the community. Right. Again, we're appreciative of that, but realize as well that we need community support to keep our doors open, to keep serving families.
That's right. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And like you said, that was a misconception of mine. I was shocked to find that 75% of your nut needed to be sourced through the community. And so as I reflect on my responsibility to my community, and I reflect on what would I want if I was in that situation, if my child was ill with cancer. And I live in South Orange County. I live 15, 20 minutes away from Mission Hospital, but my dad died at Mission Hospital, actually, and I fell asleep exhausted in one of the waiting rooms, and I actually missed the moment of his death. And I can tell you firsthand, like that kind of haunts me still, that I wasn't there for that, but I was close at hand. And what I guess if you've been in that situation, you can start to empathize. You can begin to think about, what would it be like if my precious daughter or son, bawled from chemotherapy? You want to be there at that moment. But you can't, because, you yourself are human and you have your own limitations, and you got to go eat something, or you got to get some sleep, because you're going to go nuts. And just bumping up against your own humanity in that, even though you want to be there for your child. And you guys, the Ronald McDonald House, is feeling real need. And so just even thinking about, how do we as a community come around an organization like the Ronald McDonald House so that we can take care of one another. And that's really what it's about. It's about taking care of one another. I may not be in that position right now, but if I can help those that are in that position right now, that's a wonderful thing. And it's, I think even our obligation to one another as human beings, to care for one another. And so I want to pause and go to a break. And at the break, we're going to show a quick video of the Ronald McDonald House and the work that they're doing. And then we'll come back in a minute with Noel Burcellis.
I'll never forget the look on my wife's face when the doctor gave us the news. Although he tried to break it to us gently, as soon as he said the word cancer, we knew our lives would never be the same. If it was me that was sick, that I could handle. But not one of my babies. Over the next few months, our battle for life took us far from home and into a confusing world of surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. Sleepless nights at the hospital were followed by weeks of living apart. While the hospital was doing a great job caring for our daughter, we were struggling to keep our little family together. With money running out and our marriage being tested and our other daughter suffering from the strain, we were barely hanging on. While you might know it as the Ronald McDonald House, for us it will always be our own personal miracle. And we're not the only ones who've experienced this magical place. From the moment we walked through the front doors, we knew this was special. While it was great to have a place so close to the hospital where a whole family could stay together, we soon realized this was so much more than a house. The staff and volunteers were unbelievable. They made us feel like we were the most important guests that had ever stayed there. It wasn't until later that we found out they make all the guests feel that way. Having our own private room to retreat to when things got rough was something we really appreciated. And when we didn't feel like being alone, the chance to share a meal with other families who were going through the exact same thing as us was so powerful. In fact, that turned out to be one of the most important parts of our stay, sharing our pain with other people who truly understood. Some of those people will be friends of ours for the rest of our lives. Coming back from a long day at the hospital, it was great to walk into the house and be treated to a meal prepared by these amazing volunteers. At the house, they call them meals of love or happy meals. To us, they were part of the miracle. The fact that there were people who cared this much for us was huge. It really was. It meant much more than just a meal. One of our favorite things about the house was the laundry room. While this may sound a little strange, doing laundry together was one of the most normal things we had done in months. And to have internet access and computers, and a place for the kids to play, and transportation, and outdoor space to have a barbecue, and so much more. And then there were those things that no one would have ever expected. I'll admit, I cried the day that the local hair salon came to the house and cut and styled my wife's hair. It had been so long since she had taken any time for herself, and the difference it made for her is hard to describe. I had that same feeling when Lisa delivered a gift basket to our room that included a bathrobe and slippers and some other things that made my wife feel special. It was so unexpected, yet so wonderful. And as if that wasn't enough, I need to tell you about Camp Ronald McDonald for good times. When our doctor first suggested that our daughter go to camp, we could not even imagine it. How could a child who was weak from chemo and radiation go to camp? But when we found out that there were medical facilities and volunteer doctors and nurses, and that cancer patients had been attending this camp for 30 years, we thought we'd give it a try. And then our little girl had a chance to do something that she had only heard about from her friends. She got to go to camp. Swimming, archery, hiking, horseback riding, and even a 50-foot climbing wall were all part of the magical week that she will never forget. It was on our way home from camp that we realized that the Ronald McDonald House Charities is so much more than a house.
Our 6 houses in Los Angeles, Orange County, Loma Linda, Pasadena, Bakersfield, and Long Beach truly are magical places. When you also consider our family rooms located inside local hospitals, our camp for children and families battling cancer, our college scholarship program for deserving high school seniors, and the $600,000 in annual grants we give to other charities serving children, I hope you would agree that we are much, much more than a house.
Well, welcome back to the Marketing Trail Guide podcast. My guest has been Noel Burcellis of the Orange County Ronald McDonald House. And we've been talking about the mission and the purpose and the activity of the Ronald McDonald House. It's a beautiful vision and it's a beautiful purpose, helping families stay close to one another in times of crisis, providing a home where they can be with one another and be close to their loved ones. And we started to talk about how COVID is introducing added challenge, complexity, difficulty. Getting curious here with you, Noel, about your organization and yourself as a leader. There's a couple different angles, but maybe we'll start with, you yourself as just a person and, captaining a ship that has a hole in the side. And how do you get your game face on? Where do you go mentally? How do you stay positive? What are some of those disciplines that you do to keep your head where it needs to be so that when you come out of the cabin and you take the wheel, you're commanding the respect and confidence of your team navigating through difficult waters?
That's a great question, Kevin. Really, my mindset is one of determination, right? I am determined to move forward. I'm determined to continue providing care for these families that are in need. My inspiration comes really from 2 places. One, my religious upbringing. So faith is critical for me. it has been in my life, my profession of social work. Faith has just been vital in the situations I found myself in, the populations that I was serving, whether it was with abused children, whether it was, with their parents who challenged with drug addiction, in the neighborhood that I found myself providing service. Faith is really what gave me comfort and strength, knowing that there is a calling for me to serve others. And so that's what keeps me feeling inspired every day. To your point, as far as a ministry, I really hadn't thought of it that way, but I just feel called to serve in this capacity in this time of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that inspires me is the families that I serve. As challenging as it might be for me, it really is, it pales in comparison with the challenges that they face.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I put that perspective, when I think of the faces of, we had over 2,700 guests last year at the house, right? Consisting of over 800 families. When I say those numbers have a face and a story. And it's those faces that run through my mind that inspire me to get up and get going and do what I need to do. And whether that's another report, another grant, another board meeting, another Zoom call, kind of as we talk about strategies, as we talk about fundraising and how do we go virtual and what do we do now, all those things, it's the families that keep me in mind. And again, my responsibilities and my duties pale in comparison to what the mom and dads and the aunts and uncles and the grandparents or the caregivers that are facing with these children and the children themselves, right? So the ones staying at the house now who had to go through, they had to pull spinal fluids, right? A big injection in her bone. I'm just, they're going through so much that again, I'm mindful. I'm mindful of my situation. I'm grateful. And again, I think it's that mindset, that awareness that helps me and the rest of our team that serve the families to keep things in perspective. So
speaking of teams, not everybody wakes up bouncing out of bed every morning in this stalwart mentality. We all have emotions that we deal with. We all have blind spots. We have teams of people, not machines. And I would imagine throughout the years, you've had people that you are working with that have greater and lesser thresholds for capacity, emotionally speaking, from a time management perspective. You and I didn't have this conversation beforehand, but I've got to imagine that you're dealing with some people on your staff even, or in your volunteer base that are just like, hey, I'm tapped out, or like there's some anxiety and some stress here that I just can't deal with because, oh, by the way, I don't even have the normal outlets anymore. I can't give my coworker a hug and cry it out or whatever it is, whatever that mechanism for release is. So, how have you dealt with, I'm assuming some of those things, tell me if I'm wrong, but if those things are true, like how are you negotiating and how are you living in that dance of, okay, like, let's go guys. I know it's hard, but we got to do this together. Does everybody bounce out of the bed like you, or do they need a little coaching there?
No, I have to admit my background in social work has really been a blessing for me in exploring how people cope, how the challenges that people may have, on how we all react differently to stress. We have a variety of ways of coping. So that's a discussion that takes place among our staff, pretty regularly, right? First of all, I'm very upfront when we experience a loss of a child that we've all known, right? So instead of skirting the issue, okay, let's moment of silence and then let's move on. Part of it is pausing in honor of the person that we lost, and pausing on, hey, how do we all feel, right? What did that person mean to us? That child mean to us? That mom and dad who we're not going to see, kind of thing. So part of it is addressing it, and then taking the time to process it out amongst the team, to share ideas, to just say, hey, you know what? This is what usually helps me during these times, right? People sharing ideas, people being able to express what they feel, right? Validating, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be tearful, because I think there's some misunderstanding. I got to be strong.
Right.
To mom and dad, is it embarrassing? Nothing embarrassing about being human. And so I think it's processing those things. It's sharing. It's educating. And I think I think that's what we found helpful. That we have a community within ourselves among staff. That we have a safe place to talk and share.
Mhm.
That we have a place to kind of express, hey, where do we stand? And it's okay that if I'm struggling, that we move forward, right? We do our best. And so it's reassuring our staff and acknowledging that it is tough work.
Yeah.
And Kevin, for the most part, I think it's who's drawn to this work. Staff right now that we have been, we've had longevity. And I think people self-select if this is not the place for them. They'll discover relatively quick to just say, this is too emotionally charged, too close to home. I can't deal with this. We have these discussions less frequently with volunteers, but the volunteers are in the forefront as well, right? So the volunteers in our family room, I mean, you talk about a mom and dad just coming out of hearing news of there's nothing else we can do. You're the first face that they're seeing.
Yeah.
What do you say? What do you do? Right?
Yeah.
It's the same things that we encounter when they walk through our doors. My child passed. They didn't make surgery. What do I say? What do I do? What's the right thing to say? What's the wrong thing to say? It's that. So those are the things that we process as a team, and to some extent we share that and process a few of those things with our volunteers, so that we arm them with some ideas. We arm them with some information. And for the most part, one of the things that we keep is allow people to share, right? Just be. I don't need to fill my of talking, of telling me what's going to happen and Hall's going to be fine and don't worry about it. It's this. There's a healing in just being there for another person, being non-judgmental. And so I think a lot of our volunteers and staff find relief in that, because there is no key word that's going to heal you or going to make it easier when you're going through that. But they're relieved to say, I don't have to say anything. I have to just be there and listen and share. I hear you. I'm sorry for your loss. It's those things that provide healing more than anything I can therapeutically do or say. So
in some ways, I think the work that you do has allowed you to optimize toward crisis management in some ways, just in the natural course of what you're already doing, and that now maybe COVID is just another, not to minimize it, but it's yet another crisis to manage. But it sounds like you have a framework already in place for crisis management. What I'm curious about, and I've been having some of this conversation with some clients of mine where leadership might be scared and might be fearful, might be driving hard to avoid a possible future that they don't want. And I think there's a decision point that every leader has to make about how transparent versus how in charge or optimistic or confident they are to either their leadership team or downstream from that. I don't know if you yourself have dealt with that duality of like, okay, I want to be authentic, but I don't want people to see everything. I struggle with that as well. And I think there's other leaders out there struggling with that of like, you want to be authentic and that might mean vulnerability, but is there an overdose of that where now you start to erode confidence and create a fear scenario? Have you ever thought about that duality?
Yeah, absolutely. Going through that challenge as well, right? But I always err on being authentic with my team, and where I think the threshold for me is you don't want to look hopeless and all that, but right. I think that's where if my team and my staff can feel like they can trust me, I'll be honest. That's going to go a long way, right? So that when I talk about, and I'm all vulnerable as well. I'm upset, I was disturbed, it really impacted me when we had lost this child. When I share examples of some of the challenges. But yeah, there is that fine line of, but I also know that I got to be real, because that's all that we're when we're dealing with families, it's real life. It's so raw.
Yeah.
So when families disclose things right off the bat, there is no time for kind of, well, what position do I take?
Yeah, put a good face on it.
And right there, and I have to be that way for our team as well, right? To just say that. So again, I'm sincere, I'm authentic. In the back of my mind, I look to be reassuring to our team, and when I don't know the answers, I don't know, but I'm confident that we'll stick it out and be there for our families, right? I mean, that's just kind of the charge. If it's unknown, and Kevin, we are in the most unknown of anything, right? I mean, when we talk about financials, well, how is our year going to end up, right? We just had our Walk for Kids, which is the biggest fundraiser. There's a shortfall of nearly $200,000. So now what? In fact, not only can we not only have to reflect on that, I got another upcoming event going on, and what are we doing with that? Our golf tournament that was scheduled for June.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what do we do then? And what about the revenue there?
Right.
And what about the fall gala where there's 300 people that comes? What do we do there? Right. I mean, so it's that, we're all faced with the unknown. When I'm asked to project what our budget is for the end of the year, well, what do I go by? I mean, I can't go by trend. It's you just do your best. And again, for me, I visualize the mom and dad whose daughter they're holding or son they're holding and saying, hey, I'm tired of, I don't want to get another shot. I'm tired of chemo. And mom and dad have to share, hang in there. We'll get through this, right? It's that assurance. Inside, mom and dad may feel, I don't know what the heck's going to happen, but they're assuring their child. And it's similar dynamics to our team, to the families that we serve. I don't know what the future is, but we need to hang in there, right? Let's be support for each other is all I can say. And that's I think just being real. People can read if you're not sincere. If there's anything I've learned in my profession, it's that you can never really lose by being sincere and honest with people.
Yep. Noel, I want to kind of turn the corner here. Having just heard what you said about what do we do now, and I can certainly understand that. Do you have any sense of kind of what the way forward for your organization looks like in the, let's call it the next 3 months or something like that? And then maybe talk about one step that the listeners and watchers of this podcast can take even this week to help families who are dealing with a sick child.
This crisis has impacted every aspect of our work, right? I mean, if you think about financial, and I just talked about that, our events and our budget. When you talk about communication, I'm not allowed to have people take tours anymore. I can't do presentations anymore. I don't have volunteers that come to the house. I mean, operation-wise, as far as like that, we had meal groups that came in to volunteer. We have the social distancing, we have the mask and all that. It's just much like everybody else, right? This is not news to anybody. So you're not exempt as far as a nonprofit, as far as our work. Moving forward, for us, it's first and foremost, it has been and it's highlighted now that safety is first and foremost, right? Safety of our families. And as I shared with you, when you have a child that already has a pre-existing condition, that is the top of our minds, that we need to keep everyone safe, and the families need to feel safe at the house. They need to be assured that we're taking precautionary measures. And so moving forward, we've got to keep safety on the forefront of our practices. Ensuring that safety for our families and the staff is key. Second, much like everybody else, continue to keep our supporters informed of what's going on, right? Since everybody is locked up, I can't visit you, I can't take a tour. So what's happening? Are you guys still open? Are you guys still serving families? I need to keep that informed. And then that third, I think it's what we're all called to be doing is remain fluid. It's the unknown. We need to try things new. We need to, so we've seen that increase in social media as far as our communication. Since I can't have you come in, I'll need to figure out some ways. So stay fluid. And then when you talk about next steps for your listeners, what could they do? There's a few things that I have in mind. People like options, right? So I'll give 3 options. One, for those who are able, and I understand we are all impacted in a variety of ways, some more so than others regarding our financial impact. For those who are able, support us on our emergency fund. As I talked about, there is a gap regarding our revenues this year. And we anticipate that gap throughout the growth of the year. And so for those who are able, support us that way, our emergency fund, to keep our doors open and keep serving our families. For others, like a non-financial, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. As I shared with you, one of the challenges we have is awareness and understanding. So to the extent that your listeners can share to say, here's about a charity that does stuff out there, learn more about them, right? And they share and repost. That really helps introduce people to us as a charity and the work that we do.
Yep.
And then third, for those of your listeners who believe in higher power, God, Allah, Buddha, Yahweh, send positive thoughts and healing energies our way. We welcome that. And one of the things I learned as a social worker, just the power of, in working with folks, I noticed that those people who had some belief in higher power had something to kind of fall back on when they were desperate. And far be it from me to hold that resources from our families and our staff. And so that's kind of an awkward, like, well, that's not one that you normally hear an executive director kind of pull out. But I recognize, again, that that's true for people. That's a real resource for people. And I welcome that. Again, sending positive energies and healing thoughts to the families that we serve is very much welcome.
Great. So for people to find you on Facebook, LinkedIn, how do we search for that? What should we look for?
Yeah, you can Google Orange County Ronald McDonald House, and it will pop up, and you can find out what it is that we're doing. And Kevin, I do have to share with you that we connected about a year ago, and I just wanted to share that. I know you haven't asked, but I thought about this when you invited me, and I feel so privileged to be on this. Was you led our board and our staff in a discussion around July of last year. And I will tell you, one of the key takeaways that's still impacting this now, you helped us zero in on, we were messaging, there were so many things that we wanted to message, right? And you really helped us keen into, what is it you want to say, right? You're saying so much, who's your population, and it's just, I've heard that before with other folks. It's, your target audience, blah, blah, blah. But you literally took the time, and it was kind of a half-day conversation where you drilled us into that. And it really still has an impact on us. And in fact, I know it's almost a year later, but we, as in Orange County, we're revisiting our website now. And we're realizing it's so busy. And what are you wanting to accomplish here, right? I mean, there's so many things. And so we're revisiting that now to simplify it for folks, so that our message is a little easier to hear and understand. So we haven't touched it yet; it's in the works. But I just wanted to share that, what you shared, what you brought to light about a year ago, is still in the works, and it's still impacting this charity. And so, I want to thank you for that, because you're helping us better serve our families, and by way of clearer communication with our families. Helping serve our families by drawing revenue to keep our doors open. And so again, it just it hit me to just say, you know what, you and I haven't talked for a while, but we feel your impact. And our charity, not only the discussion happening in the Orange County House, we're sharing some of the discussion on a chapter level as far as some of the changes we're going to make, how to simplify our messages, and revisiting collateral out there. Really stems from the discussion you launched us into, Kevin. So I appreciate that. And And I just wanted to share that your impact may go beyond just the Orange County program, because I am bringing it up to a higher chapter level. That's 6 houses and camp. So appreciate your work. Appreciate what you've done for our charity as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. That's really gratifying. And thank you for the work that you're doing to continue to be that light and that leader for families in this area who are facing trying times. And appreciate your leadership and the way that you continue to move forward on such an important mission. So, Noel, thank you for joining me for this podcast. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks.
Always a pleasure, Kevin. Take care. Be safe.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Marketing Trail Guide podcast. Next time, I'll be talking with Adam Robinson, expert marketer in the supply chain and logistics industry, about how providing a better experience in delivery, wrapping, and packaging of the product is just as important as the product itself. If you found this episode valuable, please give us a 5-star review and hit the subscribe button for more on how to find and benefit from opportunities in crisis. You can find the notes for this week's episode, plus all of our episodes and much more content at marketingtrailguide.com.